Hi, I'm Amanda, co-founder at Grade Level Guru, and today I'm going to show you how to get the most out of story time with Where the Wild Things Are. Before we even begin, if you're reading with a pre-K or a student who doesn't really have print awareness yet, print awareness meaning the fact that these squiggly things are the words that we say, make sure that you're reading with your finger under the words. So, like I said, your little one understands that the words you're saying when you read a story actually come from these squiggly black things on the page. I've got 10 questions for you today. You do not have to do all 10 questions with your child. Let's jump right in. All right. First thing, on the very first page, we have the word mischief. You can ask your little one, how many syllables does the word mischief have? If they struggle with that, because mischief is, it's kind of a complicated word, remember to ask them to look for vowel sounds. How many vowel sounds does the word mischief have? It's 2. Also ask your little one if they can figure out what mischief means. Hey, what is mischief anyway? Then direct their attention over here to this picture of Max, who is definitely getting into mischief. He's like hammering things into the walls of his home. So he is up to no good. So just ask your child, hey, does Max look like he's doing something he should be doing? The answer is no, he is not. All right. Also, we've got some great phonics on this page because there's something called alliteration. Your kindergarten or first grader does not need to know what alliteration is, but when authors use alliteration, they're trying to call attention to consonant sounds. So here we've got the letter W and the letter M. Well, the sound W and the sound M. So after you read, you could be like, hey, what sound does the letter W make? And what sound does the letter M make? These are for your kinder little ones who are getting into phonics. All right, question 2. I'm skipping some pages here. All right, this is a great opportunity for inference, possibly a little difficult for a kindergartner, but a first or second grader, for sure. So here, it does not say why Max's mom is calling him. It doesn't say explicitly that she's calling him for for dinner, but she definitely is. So this is a great spot for inference because while the text doesn't explicitly say that Max's mom is calling him for dinner, a young reader with good reading comprehension will be able to infer that Max's mom is calling him for dinner. So be like, hey, what do you think Max's mom is calling him for? Do you think it's breakfast? And of course it's dinner. All right, we're skipping a few more pages. Here we are. I think this is a great book to look at point of view with, because a lot of children's books are told from the first person point of view or the second person point of view. This one is actually told from an omniscient narrator. Does your second grader need to know what an omniscient narrator is? No, they do not. But you can ask them, hey, is Max telling the story? Is Max's mom telling the story? Who is telling the story? And it's a narrator outside the story. So just make sure that they understand the concept of who the narrator is, because as they get up in grade, they're going to have awareness of who is telling the story, because point of view is very important in analysis. And this is our first great visual. So for your kindergartner, ask them, hey, what if this story didn't have any pictures? Do you think it would be as fun? What does this picture add to the story? And you can talk about how it describes the forest. We can see the moon. We can see the stars. Max creeping in the forest. Your kindergarten should be able to pick like these things out. Because this text is very image heavy. It's not very word heavy. For your first or second grader, try to get a little more information out of them and ask them, hey, what do the pictures show that the words do not? And then give them some think time. Always when you ask your kid a question, make sure you pause and literally give them time to process and think and realize like, oh, I'm not waiting for help. I actually am supposed to give an answer here, okay? All right, so think time is super important for processing and to make sure that your child isn't just waiting for you to help them. All right, next we've got some fancy language. In upper grades, this will be called figurative and literal language, but your first, second grader does not need to know that, but they should recognize that this is some fancy language. I'm actually going to read this text here. It says, and in and out of weeks and almost over a year to where the wild things are. That is not a normal way to describe time. But it does give us the idea that as Max has drifted into sleep and is dreaming about going to this place where these wild things are, that in his dream, it took a very long time. But yeah, this is a very fancy way to say it. So I would just call your child's attention to like, hey, how long do you think it took him to get there? And they can understand that through this language, you can infer that like, it took a long time. But the author didn't just say it took a long time. Some fancy language there to draw your child's attention to. Again, they don't need to know that it's called figurative. Not yet. All right, here, a little bit more vocabulary. The word gnash, not a super common word, but still. It's an interesting word because it has a silent G at the beginning, similar to the word gnat, gnaw, sign. There's actually a lot of words in English that have a silent G. And if your kid is like, hey, why is the G there? You can tell them fun facts, like we did actually used to pronounce the G, but that stopped like a long time ago, but the spelling was already fossilized, so the G stayed. That is where the silent G comes from, fun fact. So you can ask them what the word gnash means, gnashed their teeth. The pictures don't help with this, you just have to use the context from the language here. If somebody gnashed their terrible teeth, does that sound like a good thing or a bad thing? Also more phonetics. The sound T shows up a lot here, so this is the great chance to ask your little one. I'm talking like pre-K, K. Can you tell me what sound the letter T makes? Anytime there's alliteration, it's a great opportunity to call awareness to like what sound that consonant makes. And alliteration is just the repetition of a consonant sound. Your kid doesn't need to know that, not until like the 7th grade. All right, here we are. Identifying what the text says explicitly. This is the page where Max has become king. And I think it's really easy to get to this page and be like, oh, Max is king now, okay. And then kind of just gloss over the entire detail of how he became king. But on the previous page, the author actually says explicitly why he became king. It says he was the most scary thing they had ever seen. And that is why they made him king. So when you get here, you could ask your child, oh, why did Max become king? Why did they crown him? And your child might be like, I don't know. And then you have to go back and you have to read and find the evidence in the text where it says, this is exactly why they made Max king. I just think that's a super easy detail to gloss over, and it's super easy to get here and just be like, oh, he's king now. Okay. All right, moving on. This is question 7. Again, you do not have to do all of these questions. You do you. What have we got here? Integrating ideas presented visually. Like I said before, this book is like super visual heavy. Not a lot of words in this book, which makes it super ideal for like kindergarten, first graders. First graders, second graders can even be reading this independently. However, it's very important that young readers learn to integrate into the story all of the ideas presented in the visuals, because this book, without the visuals, it's really kind of falls flat. So you can ask your first, second grader, what role do the illustrations play in describing the plot and setting? So you could get to this page and be like, hey, there's no words, but can you tell me what's happening in the story? What's Max doing here? Same thing here. There's no words on this page either, but what does the picture tell us about the story? What are they doing? Are they having fun? Are they getting along? Same thing. There's no words. What are they doing now? All right, now we've got words again. Okay, Now we have a really big change in the character, and we're going to analyze some character interactions here because up until now, Max has had a great time. So, a question for your kindergartner. What other characters are there in this story? Max is the main character. They're definitely going to get the monsters. But they might not remember that, oh, Max's mom is a character in this story way back in the beginning. So this is a good time to remember, like, who is he thinking about? That person is a character in the story. A question for a first or second grader, how does Max's behavior change now? How was he at the beginning of this story? At the beginning, he was mischievous, he was excited, he was adventurous, he was a little rebellious when he didn't come down for dinner, and he yelled it down to his mom that he was going to eat her up. And then while he was on the island, of course, dreaming, he's having all kinds of fun, he's adventurous, he's out there. But now, huge turning point in the story, he's actually lonely and sad. So make sure your child picks up on the arc of Max's character development here. Turning point in the story, big things happening. All right, our last page, more character development. So a question for your first, second grader. What do you think Max learned by the end of this story? There's no huge lesson here, I don't think. It's probably something just like Max's family loves him and he realizes that he loves his family, because like at first he wanted to go see the monsters, and now after he had fun with the monsters, he's like, no, actually I want to go to my family who loves me. For your second grader, what's the turning point where the character understands something? Here we see that food is left for him, but also your second grader, maybe a first grader, might be able to understand, like, oh, after he had fun with the monsters, he actually wanted to go back to his family because he knew that they loved him. And that is it. So I hope those questions help you get a little bit more out of story time while you are reading Where the Wild Things Are with your little one. At the end of the story, always ask your young reader to retell the story. Kindergarten, first, second, they should all be able to retell the story, obviously with more detail as they get older. And let's see. Anything else? Oh, one tip I want to tell you, if you don't want to do any of these questions, a super easy way to always get more out of story time is to grab some little sticky stars like this for vocabulary. Give a few of them to your little reader. Sorry, that's my cat meowing. Give a few of these to your little reader and tell them, hey, when you see a word that you don't know, why don't you just stick that on the page, and then you can go back and talk about those words, and it like brings vocabulary development. Like, you know, it's not out of sight, out of mind, but it gets your little reader thinking about, oh, do I know what these words mean? And yeah, also before we wrap up, thank you to who are they, Taberski and Burke. This book helped me a lot getting the questions. And give us a like, give us a follow, subscribe, all of those things. Thank you.